Atheist groups and social justice groups are not always, do not always have the highest element of overlap. The things you were talking about are not explicitly secular values. How do you see gay rights and abortion as things that atheists have a moral obligation to partake in?
Right. So LGBT equality, the only rationale that you can make to deny somebody human rights based on an arbitrary biological sex preference is a religious argument. And so that's a direct assault on church-state separation because they're legislating a religious perspective. So it overlaps 100%. I mean, that's exactly why we have to care about secular government, because if we don't, then religions are able to create legislation that oppresses vulnerable people. And for me, that's the only point of lobbying for secularism. It is a social justice issue to me. Every human rights issue that I've ever worked on, the barriers to progress have always been religious. So it's like I need to go straight to the source here instead of working at individual issues. Let's just get religion out of government and then we can protect people. Okay.
I want to get a sense of what it's like to lobby for whatever issues. Like, what are you doing on a regular basis? What are you working with?
Well, there's the emotional part right there.
No, I'm at that. No. Yeah, so we, this past year, lobbied on 6 bills. We lobbied on there was a voucher bill. That was actually specifically for special ed kids to be able to use public money to go to private schools, which doesn't make any sense because in private schools there are no accessibility protections. And anyway, then money is going directly to religious schools. So I spoke in committee on that bill. We wrote a lot of position papers, and this was our inaugural year, so it was definitely like we're getting started and figuring this out. And developed relationships. I mean, we knew from the get-go that there was not going to be enough votes ever on any bill to stop any bad legislation because we don't have the votes. But so we saw this year as a relationship-building year, and hopefully we have, made an impression on people, and in the future can capitalize on those relationships to stop bad bills, because frankly, we had no chance to do anything this year. So yes, it really was a lot of crying. Yeah.
So I actually know someone who's from Arizona, and he talked about in his biology class when they got to evolution, the teacher actually said, none of this is real, this is what the state requires me to teach. I'm just wondering what your take on that is, because it shows that even if you legislate something, that
well, so here, right, and that's why you get as local as you can, because a lot of those decisions, so to have that teacher censured would go through the school board and the local administration, and if you have a bunch of young earth creationists on your school board, then they're not going to do anything, and then you have to bring in the lawyers, and it's a difficult process. And in fact, Center for Arizona Policy just hired a full-time person whose job is to oversee school board elections, so they're trying to stack the school boards in the state of Arizona. So that's something that I encourage you to look at as well. I imagine in Chicago you're probably all right, but in more outlying areas of Illinois, I don't know what those school boards are like, and I don't know what they're allowing to be taught in their schools.
After the kind of fiasco that came up with American Atheists and trying to, with the 7 in Heaven way, there was a street after 9/11 that was being named for, was it police officers or firefighters? I think it was firefighters, with being given the name 7 in Heaven Way. American Atheists sued as a separation of church and state issue.
Right.
After kind of the fiasco and the conversation that came out of that, there's been a lot of discussion about trying to kind of discern what's helpful church-state separation issues to get involved with and what might not be. Could you just give us a little bit of your thoughts
first of all, it depends on what your goal is and what you mean by helpful, because this is definitely a discussion we had as we were organizing our group, like what our focus was going to be. And we kind of have an arrangement with our atheist Spiritual Freedom from Religion Foundation in our state. We have a good cop, bad cop situation. We don't take on the symbolic issues because those burn relationship bridges, and it wouldn't be helpful for me to say there is no God and you guys are all idiots one day on the news, and then to go into that legislator and say, so can we please have some human rights for gay people? So I personally am not even a little bit interested in the symbolic issues. I don't care. But I also see that it's important to opening up conversations, and I think that a lot of times when those things get on the news, I end up having a lot of really productive conversations with people because I come in with the niceness and the, cherry pie. That's not a sexual euphemism either, I promise. And then we have, productive. So it's like, oh, there are nice atheists, and they have social justice goals, and we can work with them. So, and I use this analogy a lot. Like I think, and not to overly compare the secularist movement to any other, civil rights. There are a number of problems with that. But in the suffragist movement, there were the women who were chaining themselves to the wagon wheels and getting arrested all the time, and everybody, the more sort of demure feminists were like, you're giving us a bad name, but that's the wagon wheel ladies were the ones who got the conversation in the public consciousness, and then the more, less offensive women came in and actually negotiated the legislation that was passed. And so I think that's sort of what's happening in our movement. We have Dave Silverman pissing everybody off, and then we have Chris Stedman giving hugs. So, and I think that works.
I'm totally going to use wagon wheel lady as a Georgia.
I'm not okay with that.
So, how did you get involved in this movement, and what kind of advice would you give to someone who, professionally wants to be involved as a career person in, the secular movement?
Well, it depends on what you want. Well, let me answer the first part. I got involved in this because I have, for years and years, run support groups for LGBT teens, and just saw the way that the lack of marriage equality sort of subconsciously eroded their sense of self, because they didn't have something to look forward to in terms of having a societally accepted family and being validated as something good and celebratory. And I just remember one girl at one point crying and looking up at me with these big sad eyes, like, why is no one fighting for us? It's like, oh, all right, I'm getting out there. So yeah, so I worked on marriage equality just as a citizen lobbyist for a long time, and had a moment in a legislator's office where this woman was brilliant and kind and good on all the other social justice issues, but she just kept coming back to, I just believe that God really said it was wrong for two gay people to be married. What else can I say? And I'm like, how? But you can't write a law on, that's not a basis for a law. So that was my inspiration to get involved, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time with the Secular Coalition for Arizona starting, and I'm one of the few female activists in Arizona, so that was sort of like, we need a lady on our board. So I took advantage of that, to my shame. So there are a number of organizations that already do lobbying. CFI does lobbying, American Atheist does lobbying, if you're interested in symbolic issues. And the Secular Coalition for America is interested in having state affiliates in every state. And there are many, many non-theistic organizations in Illinois that could be brought together in a coalition, and I think you could lobby from that. So in terms of preparing for a career, it depends on what you want to do. You could look into law, but like anybody, from any background can get involved in politics and run for office.
Because I'm getting my master's degree in humanities. So for me to get involved is I don't know, how would, what kind of people are they looking for? What would that entail?
For lobbying?
Yeah.
I have no background in, I worked on some campaigns when I was a teenager, but yeah, articulate people who can voice our perspective. And if you can do that, you can lobby. Yeah, it doesn't take a special background at all. So do it. And seriously, think about running for office in your local government, because we need secularists in government and school boards, and get on the school board. Seriously, that's where it's at. I have a great monologue on how science education is the most critical moral issue of our time. I can give that at the restaurant.
Give it to the entire restaurant.
Okay.